And can you tell us how you even got started in the animation VFX industry? Like, was it
Yeah,
something that happened as a child, or just like how'd you get into it?
yeah. I was the kid that saw Lion King, and I said, I want to do that for a living. I don't know what that is, but that's what I want to do for a living. I want to make cartoons. And I grew up in Jamaica. I was born and raised in Jamaica, and there weren't any, there weren't many opportunities or any opportunities for animation. At least I didn't know about it. So it wasn't until I moved to the U.S. a couple years later that I had a teacher in high school that was teaching animation, and I just kind of took the opportunity. I grasped at the opportunity and started studying animation in high school in East Orange, New Jersey, and then I went to college at School of Visual Arts in New York City. And so, majored in animation both in high school and college, and then moved out to LA after.
First of all, I want to say it's super cool and inspiring to see another Jamaican in the industry. I was wondering what the most enjoyable part of your entire creative journey has been. That's from Brittany.
The most enjoyable,
Yeah.
the most enjoyable part will always be the people that I work with, the experiences on each project. It's actually never the project or the name of the project. It's normally like I normally remember the experience on the project with the people. Um, um, and so, Jungle Book, Jon Favreau apparently is a DJ. Did not know that. And so he DJ'd at the wrap when we wrapped principal photography at the soundstage. And so all of us got to go down there for the last day in the wrap. And he was DJing, and then we did the electric slide. I got the electric slide starting. He played the song, and we had that going. I would say that. I would say um, just being on shows and bonding with people that are like my friends. Like I have a friend that I brought him on to a project. He's the comper, the project that I'm on at Step. He's a visual effects artist. We met on Black Panther. He sat next to me, and the name of the shot, we were always forever bonded on the name of the shot. What the shot name was, NNA 2440, and it was the shot where in the jungle where Black Panther jumps out of the bushes, swipes the guy on the gunner, and then the gunner flies, and then he jumps down off the top of the Jeep. And it was our first shot, and we just bonded because it was such a hard shot to work on. And we remembered the name of the shot, and now we're like close friends.
So now that you've been in the industry for like a minute, um, how do you feel about, not really like how do you feel, but what are some of your observations about like your start or your like, break into the industry versus how people are breaking into the industry now?
Gotcha. It's a different ball game. It's interesting. I'm always connecting with up and coming artists in the industry, and just to see what it is like now, 15 years later versus when I started. When I graduated, California, specifically LA, was the mecca of animation and visual effects. I mean, all the companies were here. You had, Weta was going in New Zealand. You had some stuff in London, but there was no real Vancouver. There was no Montreal. And so Sony, Digital Domain, all the studios. You had the commercial houses in New York City, but if you wanted to do feature animation, feature visual effects, it was LA. And so everyone in the world had to, for the most part, move to either LA or San Francisco, right? Like that was kind of the end all be all. And now, most feature animation work is done outside of California or LA. Even if they have headquarters here, they push a lot of the work to Vancouver, to now Montreal, to London. Now you're getting some India, and obviously you still have Sydney with Animal Logic, and you have New Zealand, right with New Zealand. But so I feel like it's normally international folks have to come to the U.S. And I think the role is reversed a bit, where being in the US, you now, for the most part, may have to go outside for feature final work.
So you also speak about, like, as pertaining to VFX, that the timeline kind of gets shorter for you having to turn out final product. Can you speak on the stability of working in the VFX industry or being a VFX artist?
Yeah, the stability. Um, it you see, like in my time, I've seen a couple studios have a hard time. I think the main thing is because there isn't an official union for
Mm,
VFX. Animation has a union, right? And visual effects, for the most part, doesn't have a union. They're the baby, right? Like if you think of filmmaking over 100 years, like we're in our like adolescent years. We're like, like for the most part, like we're 20, 25 years old. So we are the baby of the entire process. And as a result, so many things have been baked in, like unions and written contracts and stuff like that, within the structure and the fabric of filmmaking. And so because there isn't there's no official union for visual effects yet, that makes it hard. Um, and then um, it's a vendor-based space. So you're always looking for work. You're always waiting for studios to give you work. If you look at the studios like Disney, Pixar, Blue Sky, DreamWorks, they're doing um, intellectual property,
yeah.
right? Their stories start in-house. Netflix, right? Like their stories start and they own that. So when it goes out, the profits of it comes back to them. So they can spend more time doing stuff. For the most part, visual effects is a client-based space. And so a lot of the companies in it have to rely on what the studios say.
What has been one of like your biggest struggles you faced while working in the industry? Or a couple, maybe if there's some that are equally struggled.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is one couple that we touched on. I think the work leaving LA. Like I feel like I've been here for a while, and you start loving where you live, and it becomes home. And the work as a final animator started shifting to like Vancouver, to Montreal, to London, to just out of California, out of LA, and I think that made it a little bit more challenging to be a final animator because there's less work here. Then I think it's the freelance, jumping project to project to project, studio to studio. I've normally worked, you know, 4 to 5 different studios each year. The hours, I think, it's you definitely have to love it. I will say visual effects, being an animator, within the visual effects industry, being a visual effects artist, you have to love it, because the hours that you're going to end up having to do, whether it's a TV show, whether it's a film going into crunch time, like you're easily sometimes doing 60, 70 hours a week.
Oof.
You know, I have done I have done 13, 14-hour days for like 21 days straight before. I've done 12-hour days for 31 consecutive days. And I think in my 20s, my body could keep up with that. But I think at in my late 30s now, it's not as easy. I never had a moment where this industry wasn't for me. I had moments where was I good enough, to either be on this project, um, consistently animate at this level, be at this level, or just was I good enough to stick around, right? And I, for me, it was like how I got through it was, you do your best each day, you do your best, and then you come back the next day ready to do and learn more, right? And I think trying not to beat yourself up. I think if you're giving it everything and you're constantly trying to learn and you're constantly trying to get better, it whatever lows you go through, um, you know, you kind of weather those. I think early on in my career, um, the long periods without work.
Mm.
I think, you and not knowing because you really don't know, right? And like it might only be 2 months, but like you don't know that until you book something else. So you can't even enjoy the 2 months you have off because you don't want to spend as much money, or you want to do too much fun, and then it ends up turning into 7 months. And so I think those moments, like the lulls of like, it's low on work early on in my career. Those were the tough moments, but you weather through. You find other projects. You work as hard as you can. You give it everything. You hope they call you back. You hope that supervisor wants to work with you again. It is a tough time for, I would say, just in general. This is a tough time for just artists coming out of college or not having a lot of years under their belt because of just the pandemic has shut down a lot. It's kind of turned a lot of things on its head. Even though like animation is picking up, I think a little bit more unexpected because they can't. There's not a lot of shooting being done right now, so people are pushing for animation projects. I just think in general the economy is not making a lot of money, so there's that thing where it's. I think right now it's going to be a lot harder coming out of college, finding work or being in your first or second year of being in the industry. That which was kind of like during the recession, right? Like I was just lucky enough to have about 5 years of experience in the industry around the recession of '09, whereas I was cheap enough to be kept to not get cut like experienced senior artists,
Mm.
but like enough experience to get more responsibilities. So I was in that little window where people coming out of school initially weren't getting work just because of the recession. And then people at the top who were more expensive were getting cut. When I migrated to the U.S. and then I got the opportunity, a sliver of opportunity in Newark, New Jersey, like East Orange, Newark, New Jersey. My high school teacher just built a program. Like it wasn't even an official program. He just
Wow.
loved Disney, and we just showed up and we built the program from scratch. And so I think it's helped me, no matter how small the opportunity, no matter how makeshift, the opportunity is, taking advantage of any opportunity. And you might not be the most talented person in the room that you're in, but you can definitely be the most hardworking person in the room. There is, what I always tell artists, especially, Black animators, Black VFX artists, people of color within visual effects and animation, um, take any and every opportunity you can get. It's going to be unfair. There will always be prejudice. There will always be an element of prejudice. There will always be, think of it in lineage. You will always have a little bit less bias than the generation before us, right? And so, but there still will be bias. There still will be prejudice. There still will be, um, wondering if they're not hiring me or giving me that opportunity. Um, but look at every situation and try to find an opportunity in any way. Take every opportunity, any opportunity you can. At that time, I think you just have to be informed by the moment and just take it in, and it's going to affect your. I think the biggest thing I learned was society affects your art. It's not just you creating art based on imagination. Being in animation, um, you're often thinking of fantasy world, right? Like Toy Story, Jurassic Park, all these different films, Incredibles. Um, but this was the moment where the outside reality affected art and how you viewed your art and what you put into your art. And I think just a wave of looking at the world outside of just yourself came after 9/11.
So now you've done all this amazing stuff. And then, like you said earlier in the conversation, you are making a career pivot into directing. Um, I want to
Yeah.
ask you if you can just give a deeper dive. as to why you are making this change?
Why I'm making this change?
And maybe what was was it like a deciding factor for you? Was it like an incident or something, or it was something that
A
was
little
always
bit,
in you anyway? Yeah.
a little bit, a little bit. I think naturally as an animator, your storytelling is built into your DNA as an animator, and so I've always loved telling stories. You know, I've always loved short films. I've always loved trying to make and tell my own stories. I think around the time when it became official was Black Panther.
Oh,
After
okay.
being on Black Panther, I was like, you know, and then, you know, seeing Ryan Coogler maneuver his way through the system, like up close, and seeing someone that looks like me from a similar neighborhood as me, I was like, I'm ready to tell my own stories and I'm ready to be a director.